So one of the biggest questions that's been floating around the music business amongst independent musicians is, how do I create a content format that really works, right? I see a lot of musicians out there doing specific types of content, and it seems to be resonating really well. Which one should I start to focus on? There's so many different types. And for those of you that don't know, a format is just like a content type. I'm sure you've seen videos, for instance, of people that walk around on the streets with the microphones and ask people inappropriate questions while they're heavily intoxicated. That's a content type. That's like a man on the street type content. Then you have another type of format where it's a musician in front of a phone with their instrument just playing, right? That's another format. So a lot of people start asking, what's the winning format? What's the format that actually gets the most views and gets the most connection and all that kind of stuff? And here's the dirty little secret about formats. All formats work, but not all formats work in every niche, okay? So there's a reason a format exists. It's because it works, right? But what niche does that format work best within? See, that's a really deep question, right? We could spend hours and hours and hours talking about it. So really, if you've watched my videos, and if you haven't seen them before, make sure to subscribe so you can check them out. But I've talked at length about creating a dream fan avatar so you can figure out what are the things that they're thinking about. So when I'm creating my content, I can create stuff that attracts them to my brand authentically, but also speaks to who they are, right? So we can attract the right people. So I talk about that stuff at length, but when it comes to picking the type of content you're going to do that with, everyone starts to get paralyzed by all the different options that are in front of them, right? So let me lead off with this in this video, because I'm going to share with you, in my opinion, what I believe to be the winning formats, because there's so many formats I couldn't possibly list them in today's video. But I'm going to be sharing with you what I feel are the winning formats that you can start to experiment with. And then if those don't work, keep experimenting. But this is the place that you can start if you don't know where to go. So first things first, this content that you create has to be music first and brand second. Okay. Now I know the brand is kind of intermixed with the music, right? But what I mean by that is the focal point of the content needs to be the music as opposed to you as a personality. All right. We don't lead with personality and then hopefully they get, into our music. We lead with the music, and then the personality or branding serves as a reference or a reinforcement rather to the music. You guys have heard me say in videos that when you're creating your content, you want to have like a hook or a headline on the very beginning of the video, and you want that to set the frame for the scenario that your music is the perfect soundtrack for, right? That's one of the things I like to share with people because it's a powerful way of looking at the content creation process, is how do I create the music to be the thing that enhances everything that's going into the music, or excuse me, not the music, that's going into the scene that you're creating with your format. Now, we've kind of gotten that out of the way. Okay, I have to lead with the music. Don't just like go make funny skits that have nothing to do with my music and then try to transfer that into music. Go out there, try to make people connected to the music first, and then I use my personality to enhance that connection. So now we can start saying, okay, where do I focus? To me, there's two umbrellas. The first one that we're going to go over is entertainment. Okay, so you have to have entertaining content. What would that look like? Entertaining content would look something like a skit. Now, an artist that's really, really, really good at this is Connor Price. I mention him all the time because I think he's done super well with this because he's very smooth with it. He also has some subtle things that he does that I won't go in length in this video into, but check out some of his videos. You'll see them. He does skits where the music is the payoff that the intro of the video sets up, right? So his skits are very much like, okay, I'm going to tell a story about, I'm going to like step into this story where a musician just runs into the studio and he sits down behind the mic and he's about to put the headphones on, and either he doesn't know what to sing about or he knows exactly what to sing about, but there's a story behind either the like, all right, so they sent in this song and they want you to sing about this. And he's like, well, I don't know what to say about this. And then the producer, which is also him, by the way, he's playing both producer and musician. He's talking to himself saying like, maybe you could just be real and talk about this and this. And he's like, okay. And then he goes like right into a very emotional line in one of his songs, right? He very strategically sets it up. You think about like a comedian, right? They have what's called the setup to the joke, and then they have the punchline, okay? Comedians are really, really great entertainers to model, by the way, not because we're going to become comedians, but you have to think about it from what they do and how they measure effectiveness. For a comedian, their value is not created just because they're on stage, right? I saw someone comment this, by the way, that was very, very cool that they were bringing this up, which is that, just because you're on stage as a musician or as a comedian or any other entertainer doesn't mean people are going to like you. So comedians are very, very directly aware of how well they're performing versus how bad they're performing based on the audience reaction. The feedback is immediate. So we have to figure out, like, okay, how can I create content that has this setup that gets people engaged? So like when a comedian's telling a good joke, and then the punchline, when the release and the closure happens to the joke, everyone's like, oh, I see why that whole setup existed, right? We need the music to be the punchline, where the scenario that we create in the beginning sets up this tension that, is resolved by the lyrics in the music, or something that the music solves soundtrack-wise or creates a scenario around. So hopefully you guys are understanding what I'm going at with the skit format, right? Now there's other formats inside of entertainment. So we could look at a performance video. That's something like I mentioned earlier where someone is performing in front of the camera. However, there's different variations of performance videos. There's variations where it's a solo musician singularly in front of a phone or camera performing, or you have a rehearsal situation. Maybe you're being filmed in rehearsal, so there's a group of you being filmed, or you're at a gig. Yeah, you're getting filmed being played on stage, okay? So those are all different performance videos that you could do under the performance format. Very, very straightforward. Now, which one works for you? If you do acrobatic guitar-based music, whether acoustically or electrically, this is probably going to be a good one for you because a lot of the fans of the genre are also musicians. So they want to see what you're doing. And if what you're doing is acrobatic, then people will be interested. The dream fans will be interested because that's something they're into. So they want to see the vantage point. They won't be as interested in like personality skits per se, unless you really, really made them niched down and relevant. It's a lot harder in that instance, but you can still pull it off. But hopefully you see why, that genre would lend itself to the performance format versus something like hip hop, rap, Christian contemporary, or whatever, leans itself towards other genres, So the next way that we could look at it is stories. Now, when I say stories, that's kind of a meta word, so I should be very specific on what I mean by the story format. More like the monologue format, where you're actually just talking to the camera. But again, the monologue has to serve the purpose of setting up the music as the payoff to why you're talking in the first place. There's a great country musician named Brian Andrews. I use his example all the time for all the new subscribers here, is that he went on this diatribe about men's mental health. And then, right when the tension was greatest in what he was saying, he hits play in his car. He's filming this all in his car, ranting in his truck. And then when this emotional climax hits, he plays the song and hits it right at the chorus when the emotional lyrics are at their most, touching and deep, right? So it really builds that sort of, like I talked about, like what comedians do, where it's the setup and then the payoff, the setup and the punchline, right? Let's look at some other ways that we could, utilize stories. Stories are meta in the sense that you can tell a story just with your text that you put on the screen. We call those the headlines, right? So whenever you have a video, and let's say it's a video of you, sitting on your car with a mic in hand, and you're sitting there singing kind of into the sky, and there's a text that goes over the screen that's describing a story that your music is about. So I'm going to use a cheesy example like a breakup. So let's say you're on the car, you got the mic, you're singing about like, I'm never gonna find someone like you. Whatever, I don't know. I'm not a singer, don't judge me in the comments. So they're singing about how they miss somebody, right? And then the text, the headline that goes over the video needs to say something that's relevant to the story that your song creates. Okay, so if people could step into the shoes of the person who's singing the song, the story that they're living out through the song, what is the headline that you could start to put over that? That's creating a story without you doing a monologue. Okay, so I wanted to differentiate using stories where you're actually speaking passionately on something that is about the story of your song that you resolve with the music versus using the headlines and the text to start telling the story. I use this example with my clients a lot, which is, do you remember those videos in the early 2000s, or the mid 2000s, I should say, where they would hold up flashcards and would have one part of a sentence, and then the next part of a sentence, and the next part of a sentence, and people would just do that for 2, 3, 5 minutes through a video? Well, one of the reasons that was very effective is because there was a psychological component there where the person was wanting closure to see, well, what does the next thing say? Okay, I saw what that said, but what does the next one say? Is this the end? And there's this sort of like thread pulling the viewer through the video of this anticipation of, it's a more extreme example is what you've seen where people have rope tied all around them, and it's a super long rope that's, tied to a car, and then the car starts driving away really fast like it's going to pull them. And the whole time they're sitting there talking to you, telling their story about whatever. And so your brain is kind of watching like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And they're going to freak out. Well, that's building anticipation. So you can do that same kind of effect by having, you're singing the song. The song is very clearly about something that people can discern. That's another kind of side note for another day, which is sometimes as songwriters, we write lyrics that are so poetic that nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. Like in rock and metal, we sort of have this problem a lot. We like to go into the dictionary and find the most eloquent sounding words in the world that absolutely nobody knows at all. The discerning of the verity of the, like, oh, goodness gracious. Like, no one knows what that means. So like, how is someone going to connect with it? Now, if they don't understand the lyrics, the only thing they have left to connect with is the instrumentals. And so it's just kind of one level of audience that's now been taken out of the equation because they use the lyrics as the connection point. For musicians, the instrumentals are usually the connective point. For the general population, the lyrics are the connective point. So make sure that your lyrics do tell a story. Like sometimes, you can be avant-garde if you want to, if that's your niche, if that's your thing. But if you're trying to appeal to at least a general amount of people, you kind of have to have some sort of discernible, like, reason the song exists. Now, if you're doing instrumental, this is actually great because now the context can kind of be whatever you want it to be, right? Just based on the headline that you put over the video, now you've created a frame for this instrumental, and one text could be different from the next, and they would both be right because there's no lyrics, and so it's all open to interpretation. But again, if you have lyrics, you hopefully tell enough of a clear story that we could start at some point in the song and basically be like, oh, I know exactly what you're singing about. And if that headline, like I talk about, it creates a frame that makes that hit harder, now you've got a winning piece of content right there. But again, it's not in the format itself, it's in the delivery, right? So that's why in my channel, I talk so much about those things that build the connection. But using stories, using performances, using skits, these are just a few entertainment-based formats that you can start testing and hopefully start getting some more results with. Now, the next umbrella that I like to look at most things with is the education formats. To me, education formats can be great. So how-to is the most classic education format ever. So let's say you're a musician who writes reggae music. You could make the headline of your video, how to write a chill reggae song in 5 steps. People will be attracted to that because, oh, it's an educational based thing. Now, keep in mind, some people in education, you have to walk this fine line depending on who your audience you're trying to attract is, really. Because you may intentionally do that where you know that you're writing music for musicians, and so the how-to aspect attracts musicians, so that can work for you. However, it can work in another, like, opposite of your goals. If you're trying to, let's say, for example, attract people, let's say you're a producer and you want to attract people to sign you up to produce their music. If you do too much how-to content, you might attract other producers as opposed to people who would be an ideal fit for you. So again, that's why I always say you have to know who your dream fan is or your dream prospect is whenever you're creating your content. Otherwise, you're going to have a bit of a mismatch there. So how-to, though, can be an effective educational-based frame. Okay, here's how to, write the chillest song you've heard in 2025. I don't know. One of my favorite education-based ones is here's how I insert cool result, insert cool thing. So you're not just saying, generally speaking, educational video, how to do this. You're saying, here's how I did this. And then you walk them step by step through what you did. Now notice it's a different frame. In one frame, it could be like something that you read out of like a For Dummies book, how to do this. In another example, here's how I did it. It's an experiential thing. So here's how I played a gig with nothing but my acoustic guitar and a stomper box, which is those things that you stomp on and it makes it sound through the PA like it's going boom, boom, So, here's how I played 5 shows in 7 days as a touring musician. Here's how I make it through, touring, you can get a lot of how-tos in there. Here's how I survived 3 days in touring as an independent musician. Fans like to see that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, musicians will be interested in that too, but fans like to see that kind of stuff, like how the other half lives. And when they see behind the scenes and how humble it is, they have a bigger appreciation for you when you show up because they know that, like, it's not just you out there in Rolls Royces and big fancy buses just popping bottles and being rock stars. You're out there going to Subway to Subway to Subway, Love's gas station to Love gas station to Love gas station. And here's how I, left my job at Friday, played 3 gigs over the weekend and made it back before Monday. You can do these kind of things to attract people to, like, here's how I did this, but the frame of it is education. Don't think that because the education format frame exists that everything has to be like a tutorial. Like I said, how to is the tutorial stuff. Here's how I is more experiential stuff that you've done, but you frame it from, here's how I did this. And then you just tell your journey. You tell your story. Now, another content frame in education is transformational, right? You talk about how here's what, the song sounded like when it was a demo, and here's what it sounds like when it's finished. If you're a producer, here's what this mix sounded like when a client sent it to me. Here's what it sounds like now. If you're a music instructor, here's what the client's performance looked like before they started working with me versus after me. Transformational-based content can be great because that can start to show people like, oh my gosh, this person's legit. They know what they're talking about. Now, if you're an independent musician, transformation content could also be around, like, it could be around going from demo to full thing, but it could also be the creation of the music itself. So when I say transformation-based content, we need to really make sure we're getting broad with our view of this. So transformation could be the song going from a kernel of an idea to the full idea. Who's a musician that's utilized this very well in the independent music space is Forrest Frank. He is an artist who has utilized a couple of different strategies. Now, here's the thing. Some people don't feel comfortable with this, and I understand, but here's what he did, and it worked really well, which is this content setup where you're in the studio with like a writing partner or a friend, and you're trying to write the music, and then you both stumble upon this lightning in a bottle. That's the format, right? You're in the studio with somebody, and you stumble upon lightning in the bottle. Sometimes you can do it by yourself, and that can work too. You're in the studio by yourself, and you get lightning in a bottle. But here's the thing. A lot of times these are engineered moments, meaning they've written the song, they know the song's a banger, so they don't just look at the content and say, oh, look how amazing the song is that we dropped. They actually take it back and they say, what if we broke it down so that I show people the instruments being stacked onto the track? Like, oh, what if we did something like, and then you show you adding that into the track, and then You know, maybe there's another video like that where, man, we've got this track, but what's a good phrase? Like, how are you feeling right now? Like, if you could put that into a sentence. And he's like, I'm about to have a good day, man. It's like, I like that. I'm about to have a good day. And then all of a sudden he turns it into the hook of the song. I'm about to have a good day. And you're like, oh, okay. So you're contriving a situation to which the writing of your song, the lightning in a bottle writing of your song, i.e. the transformation of the song, is recorded and filmed. And you're catching this. You know, oh, I caught this crazy moment on camera. Now, again, some people look at that and go, that wasn't like authentic. You know, you didn't genuinely write it right then in front of us on the thing. This is just a skit. Sure, some people will feel that way, right? By and large, people won't really care. That's the thing. It's like, should you do it? Should you not do it? Most people don't care. Now, again, use your genre. You know, have caution depending on per genre. His is more of like pop-based music. But you look at that and you say, okay, they engineered a situation where they're showing the transformation of the song, whether that's, oh, here's the cool instruments that we could stack on to create this. Or it could be something like, oh, here's how he came up with the lyrical hook. Because in pop music, that's what they're always looking for. If you look at songs like, you know, Payphone, that's based off of a phrase, a casual, common, what someone call colloquial phrase. I'm at a payphone. Okay. Oh, I'm at a payphone. Let's turn that into a song. You know, I'm at a payphone. Yeah. So you get the idea. That's what they're trying to capture on video, is the capturing of that type of moment, right? And again, you can engineer these type of things. You can maybe call that a skit if you wanted to, but I like to view it as transformation because the frame is a little bit different in my opinion. So clearly my son needs to go down for a nap. I can hear him screaming. So to finish this up, we need one more piece to the puzzle here. Okay, I've mentioned that we need to put the music first and have the branding reinforce the music. Then I talked about, okay, we have entertainment and education-based content that we can just start testing at. Like I said, there's like thousands of different formats out there. This is something to get you going and start getting some results and see what works for your niche and see what doesn't work. And then the final component here of the entertainment and the education thing is when you're creating the content, have a call to action. Now you want the content to be very casual, and then when the call to action comes, you want it to be equally as casual. You don't want to all of a sudden go into hardcore pitch mode at the end of your content. What you want to do is give them a prompt to do one of a few things. One, to listen. So you get a new song out and you're trying to get people to go to Spotify and listen to it. You want to say, hey, go listen now. Don't say, hey, it's out now. That's just a sentence. That's not an ask for them to do anything. If you want to ask them to do something, give them a command. Hey, go listen to this. Go experience the music on Spotify. Go listen to the music on Spotify. Give them a call to action. Tell them how to do it. Go experience the song on Spotify. Click the link in the bio. I know people hate saying click the link in the bio. You know, say click the link if you want to. Point at the direction that the bio will be in if you want to do that. Whatever, right? But give them a call to action to listen to whatever song they were just hearing in that piece of content. Number two, you want to ask them to join, right? Have a piece of content that you can subtly mention. Yeah, get more stuff like this on our email list. Click here to join, or click the link here to join, or go here to join. Finally, you want to ask them to buy something. Now, typically, what do you want to ask them to buy when it comes to social media? I recommend just selling tickets, personally. When it comes down to selling merchandise through social media, selling other kind of offers through social media, it's not the best communication platform to do that. But every now and then, you'll have a show come up, you'll have a tour lined up, even if it's a little mini tour, you know, just playing a few weekends on and off. And what you'll want to do is ask them to buy tickets. So there's going to be some kind of call to action in these videos, because you don't want to have one that actually starts winning. You start picking one of these skits, performance stories, how to, here's how I, whatever. You start going through all these videos and you find the one that hits. You don't want to be in a position where it hits and you didn't have a moment where you actually told anyone to do anything, right? You didn't tell them to go listen. You didn't tell them to go join the email list. You didn't tell them to do all these things. And so we want to make sure that we include these call to actions very subtly, very casually. You can either speak them if it's story monologue, or what I recommend to keep it super casual, just make it text. make it text-based, right? So that way the text is the one being pushy. You're not being pushy, the text is being pushy, right? So hopefully you guys have gotten a ton of value from today's video. If you did, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the notification bell, all that kind of good stuff. And if you'd like some one-on-one help figuring out who is my dream fan avatar, how can I start creating content that really connects and resonates with them, and then actually take them through a sales process where they'll want to support, click the link that's in the description to apply for a one-on-one coaching call to see if it'd be a good fit for us to help you out. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.